want to run faster, like I do, the only way to do that is to try something you're not sure you can do, right? So if you're a marathoner and you go out and run 10 miles every day, you're never going to get faster. But if I put you on a treadmill and I say, I want you to run 5 miles an hour faster than you normally do for 2 minutes, that sounds very scary, but you can probably do it, and it's going to be really uncomfortable, and you might fail, but in that failure comes growth. You can also apply it to your career, right? Like, we raise our hands for the hard jobs. I raised my hand to go open Target in Canada, and you all know how that ended. But I will tell you that it was the most robust leadership experience I've ever had. I mean, it gave me the courage to leave Target and start Fly Feet, because I was like, I can come out of the biggest retail disaster in history. I can do this. So I also believe that failure is inevitable, but failure doesn't define us. How we react to it does. So in the Canada example, it would have been very easy for me to crawl into a hole and never come out again. I mean, like, really honestly, like, that was an incredibly difficult professional experience, but a very difficult personal experience, right? Like, it was very public, how big the disaster was. It wasn't clear why it happened. Target never really talked about why it happened. And so all you could do was just look at the leaders that went up there and be like, right? So I was like, yeah, it didn't work, but I'm not going to be defined by that. And I had the opportunity to come back to Target and go into a really phenomenal job that I loved. But I just think that's a really powerful belief. And then the last one is, I believe in the right environment, we are all willing, as humans, we are all willing to put in the work, try our best, and be vulnerable. And that is magic. But it has to be in the right environment. So this is my sort of belief system that I've kind of learned along the way. And so for me, vulnerability can't exist without these things. Because vulnerability without a belief system is just way too scary for any of us, right? Like, we have to know that, like, if we're going to try something we're not sure that we can do, that we believe that failure is inevitable and we can fail, but that's where growth happens, and how we react to it is how it defines us. So that's my belief system. So let me just take a step back and talk about how that applies to Fly Feet. So Fly Feet exists to inspire people to chase the best version of themselves. Our ambition is not just to be a fitness studio. And so if you come to Fly Feet, it feels very different than your typical fitness studio, and I'm going to tell you why. So, you know, when I started, so in order to leave Target, I had to create this business case that not only proved that the business was viable, but also proved to my husband that me quitting that job made sense. So I actually did a lot of consumer research with a local agency, and that's, I think, important, because when people just watched, if people just watched me leave Target, it looked like, oh, Kristin like quit her job and went and found herself and then started it. Like, no, I quit my job. The lease was signed, the website was built, the brand was done, the research was done, the team was hired. Like, it was all done, and then we launched. But one, my as I said before, like, the biggest insight was fitness is a very vulnerable place for people. And for me personally, you guys are like, oh yeah, like, yes. But so for me, just so you know, that was a shock, because my relationship with fitness was very different than what I heard in the focus groups. My relationship with fitness was these things. So for whatever reason, I have never fallen off the wagon. I've trained, worked out, moved, had a practice, whatever you want to call it, since I was in high school. I've never had a time where I wasn't doing something, running, going to classes, doing yoga, whatever it is. And for me, it wasn't for the vanity of it. Like, the number on the scale has gone up and down throughout the years. I have had 3 kids. For me, fitness is like my sanctuary. It's like the one moment in my day where I can clear my mind, where I can really think about, like, how I want to show up for my family, for my team, for my job. It builds my confidence. Like, if I didn't run when I was in Canada, I literally would have lost my mind. I mean, period. So it's my reprieve. So for me, fitness has been this place in my life that is just so powerful and like where I get my energy. And so when I went to these focus groups and heard these mostly women talking, I was like, holy crap, like they have a very different experience. I heard things like, I'm scared. I'm not sure I can do it. I'm not enough. Like I don't live up to the standard. I see the fitness imagery and like, that's not me. It's not for me. I don't belong there. I'm too old. I'm too fat. I'm too slow. I'm too whatever. And I was just like, almost paralyzed because I was like, oh my gosh, like, can you imagine if I launched Fly Feet and I only knew this? People would have been like, no thanks. Like, that sounds scary. And people still think it's scary. We'll talk about that in a minute. But like, that was really powerful for me. And these women were so vulnerable. Like, they were willing to say, like, like their whole self-worth was like wrapped up into whether or not they were willing to invest in their own health. I mean, that was like so powerful for me. So that was my biggest customer empathy realization, number one. The second one is people are desperate for solutions in an industry that isn't providing them. So I was like, okay, you've got this cohort of people that are scared to work out, but they all say that they want to. It's something they want to do, but they're scared. So I started to look at the fitness industry to say like, okay, well, so if this is the consumer, what is the industry bringing? And again, like, to be fair, I had blinders on because again, I think about my movement practice very differently. And so here's what I saw. 69% of us are either overweight or obese. The fitness industry is completely unregulated. So Brian could decide he's going to launch Brian's Bootcamp tomorrow, and all he needs is to go to Erin and be like, make me a snazzy brand, and hire some like six-pack, good-looking trainers, charge whatever he wants, whatever he wants, sell whatever he wants. If he promises people that there is a path to looking better, they will pay him money. And there is no regulatory body that would say, Brian, you're full of shit. Like, that's what the industry is. Oh my gosh. Like, essentially taking advantage of these people's vulnerability. So I was like, no, we're not going to do that. The fitness industry is saturated with marketing concepts that aren't meeting people's needs, and in some cases exploiting their vulnerabilities. Like, that's what I saw. Now, is everyone like that? No, of course not. But there's a lot of that out there. And so understanding those two things made me really think about, well, so what are the ingredients that need to be true for Fly Feet to come to life in a way that will authentically serve the consumer that I saw in that focus group? So let's dissect the problem a little bit. So how many of you have some kind of movement practice? Whatever it is, raise your hand. Okay, good, like the majority of you. How many of you do it alone? Raise your hand. Most of you, interesting. How many of you do it in a group? Okay, like maybe like 20%. Okay, interesting. So the ones that are doing it alone probably have a similar relationship that I do, right? You do it alone because you're like, this is my reprieve, this is my sanctuary, this is where I get my energy. The ones that are doing it in a group tend to represent the people that I saw in that focus group. But here's what's happening in the industry. If you step away and you really look at classes, for example, a fitness class tends to hold up a mirror and say, Ellen, this is you today, right? Like, it's a mirror of yourself. So if you are looking at the mirror image of yourself, you are not getting any better. And what I mean by that is, you're coming in, you're going through the movements, you're getting a little bit sweaty, you're not finding the edge of your experience. So you leave that class and you're like, I crushed it. But that's not actually physiologically doing anything for you, Ellen. I'm here to tell you. The workout isn't rooted in science because we just established that like Brian's Bootcamp is just gonna go to Erin and be like, give me a cool brand, and like it doesn't matter what I say or charge or whatever. Like, as long as Lisa's willing to pay Brian, like, we're good. So it's not rooted in science. It's kind of optional in this industry, which is, again, like, if you really step back and think about it, by the time we talk about pathological disease, it's almost too late. What is the number one preventer of pathological disease? Exercise and diet, right? And so if the industry is not, if this is the number one thing that will help prevent pathological disease, exercise and diet, and there's zero regulation around it, how is the consumer to navigate that, right? It's in the spirit of like holding a mirror up and being like, this is you. It's the fitness industry is typically you versus the workout. Meaning, Ellen's gonna go in, the instructor's gonna be like, here's what we're doing today, and Ellen is either gonna be able to do it and feel like a rock star and probably not get any better, or not be able to do it and feel horrible and maybe not come back. It's you versus the workout. Like, that's a problem. And the last thing is it's tone deaf branding. 69% of us are overweight or obese. What does the fitness imagery, what does the fitness industry imagery look like? Not like that. So these women look at the six-pack abs and the sweaty bodies after 43 years old, after 3 kids, and are like, oh Lord, I do not look like that. I do not look like that. And I don't care how many fitness classes I do, probably never look like that. I don't feel enough. That's not for me. I don't feel like I can be part of that community. So there's a lot of layers there. So we started to think about how do we create a concept that includes and inspires and is rooted in science, that literally provides them the solution that they're looking for. Like, not just marketing, not just a shiny brand, but like the workout itself is rooted in science. And this is a game changer, but also what scares people. But this is the only thing that will change them. So instead of holding up a mirror to Ellen and saying, good job, Ellen, this is what you look like today, and you're gonna do this again tomorrow, and then I say, and then I say, and then I say, and then I say, and you're never seeing any change, we say, Ellen, good job, but here's your potential. Here's what you could be doing. I'm gonna ask Ellen to try something in a class, and let's be clear, it's not me. I'm not a coach, I do not do these. We have really amazing rockstar coaches that do that, but at Fly Feet, we ask you to do something you're not sure you can do. And the only way we can do that without you leaving and being like, screw that, I am never doing that, is if we have the belief system I articulated in the beginning. If you are surrounded by a community that embraces the fact that failure is okay. And so I know the only way to make Ellen fitter, faster, stronger, whatever your goals are, is to say, Ellen, you are enough, but you could be more. And we're gonna help you find that potential. And so what that means is, don't set your treadmill at the same speed you've been running for the last 5 years, because that's what every runner does. I want you to set it to a speed where you're like, at the last minute of your interval, you're literally saying Hail Marys that you don't either fly off the back of the treadmill or throw up. Like, that's what we're asking you to do. Why? Because that is what will drive change. And either two things will happen. Ellen will either crush it and be like, holy crap, I never knew I could do that. Or she will fail and she will be okay. And what an amazing metaphor for her life, right? So like at Fly Feet, I'm like, yes, I want to solve the vulnerability problem for you in the studio, but I want you to understand that if you can do it in the studio, you can do it in your life. And that is meaningful, but it only works when you have a belief system that your community is bought into and your team is bought into. So show Ellen her potential. The workout is hard. It is hard because hard is what drives change. But guess what? We can do hard things, right? We can do hard things. When people say to me, like, I want to go to Fly Feet, but I'm like really scared. I'm like, well, why are you scared? I mean, the answers are, there's a myriad of answers, but generally when you get down to it, they're like, I'm afraid it's hard. I'm afraid I can't do it. And I'm like, but you can do hard things. Like, you had a baby, right? Like, you've solved really complicated problems in the corporate world. Like, you can do hard things. Like, you can run a little faster than maybe you think you can for a minute. Like, you can do hard things. At Fly Feet, it's not you versus the workout. That doesn't make sense. That's not how athletes train. At the Minnesota Vikings practice, do you think the coach is like, okay, everybody, get on your treadmill instead of 8 miles an hour? Like, no. I mean, my husband is so proud of this sports reference, but like the wide receiver runs faster than the lineman, right? You can't ask the lineman to run as fast as the wide receiver. 69% of us are overweight or obese. How can I put all of you in a class and go, okay, you all, here's what we're gonna do. And it's the same for you and you? No, like that doesn't work because for you it's gonna be too easy and for you it's gonna be too hard. You're not gonna come back and you're not gonna change. So you're probably not gonna come back either. So it's you versus you. The workout is scalable. So literally what that means is the coach will say to you, okay, Ellen, we're gonna do. I'm totally picking on you. Have you done a Fly Feet class?
No.
Oh, well, you're gonna
Now I
go
must.
through it today. Okay. So the coach will say, okay, Ellen, I want you to find a 2-minute effort speed. And in your head, you're like, I have no idea what that means. We're gonna give you a couple times to try it. It should feel like the last 30 seconds you are wondering whether or not you're gonna make it. You are literally counting down the seconds in your head. And if you're not at that place, you're not running fast enough. So Ellen is gonna run at one speed, Lisa's gonna run at another speed, Brian's gonna run at another speed. Like, it's all based on how you feel, not what the instructor is telling you. It's based on feeling. And so what happens then is Ellen is like, oh my gosh, I ran that 2-minute effort at 8 miles an hour. I've never done that before. Now guess what? You know what your edge is. You know in that moment what the edge of your experience is. And you get to make a choice every time you come back. Do you want to hit 8 or do you want to try 8.5? And you don't have to try 8.5 every time, but we're going to challenge you to push that every time you come because that's how you will get better. Again, can't you see how that translates to your life? How often do we get stuck because we're doing the same thing and we're not exactly sure how to get out of it and we're just like scared to take that step? But if you can show yourself very simply that in a fitness studio, you're willing to take a risk, which is very vulnerable. You're in a class with a lot of people and you are literally like, I may or may not make it through this next 20 seconds in one piece. But everybody's feeling the same way, right? And you know that. And you're running at 8 and she's running at 6 and he's running at 12 and nobody cares. Like nobody cares what the speed is. You all feel the same way. So it's you versus you. I gave you the example with treadmills. We do the same thing with push-ups. How many push-ups can you do in a minute? Some people maybe will do 3. Some people may be able to do 30. And your version of a push-up is going to be different than your version of a push-up. But it's incumbent upon us to create that personalized experience for you. That's what the fitness industry should be doing. But they don't. They say, okay, guys, we're going to do 30 push-ups in a minute. And like, you're shitting your pants and you're like, oh my God, I can do 60, right? Like, so it has to be you versus you. If you look on our Instagram feed, you will not see a photo of anybody's abs. Because, again, 69% of us are overweight or obese. Like, we don't look like that. And so what's so funny is the fitness industry thinks that by providing that imagery, they're going to create inspiration. But by providing that imagery, they actually make us feel like we're not enough. Because we all look at it and go, oh, I do not look like that. I've never looked like that. She probably doesn't even eat. She's probably miserable, right? Like, I mean, it's just like, no, we want to create a brand that feels really inclusive. So like, here's the problem, here's the solution. It's all rooted in this insight that like, every one of us feels very vulnerable when we are put in a room and asked to do something we're not sure we can do in the fitness environment. The Minnesota United soccer team, and this is be scary for some of you who don't come to Fly Feet, you're gonna be like, but I'm gonna tell you anyway. The Minnesota United soccer team trains with us in the off season. So some people when they hear that are like, holy shit, I'm not a pro soccer player, I cannot come train with you. Yes, you can. So I'm sitting there in January, Miguel Ibarra, you guys know him, he's like superstar midfielder, so fast. He's sitting in the, like right outside of the studio and he's kind of a smaller guy and he's like sitting there and he's like rubbing his hands together and he's like swaying back and forth and I'm like, Miguel, what's your problem? What's going on? He's like, I'm nervous. I was like, nervous for what? He goes, he points to the studio, he goes, I know what's gonna happen in there. And I was like, well, but that's your fault. Like, you make all the choices in there, not the coach. And he's like, no, I know, but I know, again, like, I know that the way it works is I get to decide, and if I don't make the right choice, I leave feeling like I didn't take a chance on myself. And I was like, yes. So in that class with Miguel is Katie, who's 8.5 months pregnant, literally, she wasn't really running, but next to him, running next to him, because at 8.5 months, I mean, if you've been pregnant before, you know that it's challenging to run. But it was so magical because they did the workout and they felt the same. Their speeds were different, their weight was different, their reps were different, their workout, like when you really looked at what they were doing, was very different. But they were united under the single unifying factor that unites everybody at 5 feet, and that is they're willing to put in the work. I don't care how. Strong, fast, fit, skinny, fat, whatever, like they're willing to put in the work. So that's our objective. But it has to mean more. Our big, very audacious goal is, what if we created something that not only addressed people's fitness needs, but also gave them the tools for living the best version of themselves? So I said that this was our vision, to inspire people to chase the best version of themselves, right? And so you can kind of hear as I'm talking, like the core tenets of how the experience comes together has to be bigger. It has to mean more to people than just like sweating in a dark room with a green light and loud music and a bunch of other sweaty bodies. It just has to mean more to people. Because again, going back to that focus group where that woman was like, I just don't feel like I fit in. I mean, it's such an emotional thing, right? Because we live with this like body that people are not willing to spend time on because they're scared. So it has to mean more to them. And so that's why if our BHAG is to create something that addresses people's fitness needs as well as needs in their life, you have to have a core belief system that they can fall back on, where vulnerability starts to make sense, where vulnerability is in service of something bigger, right? And we believe if you can do it in the fitness studio, our mission is to provide the environment, right? Because the third belief is, in the right environment, we're all willing to put in the work, try our best, and be vulnerable. And that's where the magic happens. If we can do that in the fitness studio, we believe that it translates to your life, right? Mm-hmm. So if you can see it in a microcosm, you can find other places. So that's how that all comes together. But it's about the how. So you're all sitting there like going, oh, that sounds really nice, but like, how does that all work? And so here's the how. I told you the workout is rooted in science, which makes it hard and slightly uncomfortable, but that's okay because that's where change happens. I told you that it's scalable. So like we say push-ups, you could do 2 or 20. It's really up to you. Functional movement. There's no dancing. There's no choreography. We're not doing bicep curls because this is not functional. When do you do this in your life? Ever? Never. You never do this, right? If you pick up a sack of groceries, you do not do this, right? No. You do a squat and you pick it up, right? So we do functional movement. We push ourselves off the ground, we squat, and we push things over our heads. That's it. Like, that's what we do. And we're focused on mechanics. So your movement practice to combat pathological disease has to be safe, and you have to be moving well. And because Brian can open his fitness concept with no certification, no science, no anything, he can ask you to move however you want. And you're probably going to get hurt, and you're probably not going to come back. So again, like, not fair to you. So our focus is on mechanics, and the people who lead our classes very deliberately are called coaches, not instructors, because instructors do the workout with you and are focused on themselves doing the workout. A coach comes around and is like, hey, Lisa, in your squat, drive your knees out so you're not gonna, hurt your knee. Right? Like, they're giving you coaching points. They're seeing you one-on-one. They're helping you understand how to move well. So the workout is focused on mechanics. We talk about this 11-star experience. You guys, I'm sure, listen to how I built this. There's how I built this one on the Airbnb. I can't remember the founder's name, but Airbnb talks about their 11-star experience, and it's utterly fascinating, right? So in the industry, in the Airbnb, in the hotel industry, they talk about the 5-star experience. And so it's really fascinating because of the 5-star experience, it's like, okay, like you walk in, they know your name, and you know, you're welcomed, and your room is ready, and you get there, and it smells nice, and whatever. Then they're like, well, what's a 6-star experience? And the team's like, oh, well, you know, maybe there's like a little chocolate under the pillow, right? And they keep incrementing it up, and then the guy's like, what's the 11-star experience? And the team's like, oh my God, like your run out song is on when you walk in the hotel. Like Eminem is like blasting, right? You're like, Kristin, you are here. We are ready for you. I know that you love to run. I have created all the best running pads in the cities for you. It's on your bed. I also bought your favorite pair of running shoes, and I got a personal trainer to actually run along with you so that you don't get lost. Like, right? 11-star experience. All of a sudden the team's like, oh, screw the 5-star experience. Like, let's go. And so for FlyFeed, we talk about this idea of the 11-star experience because, again, if fitness is a very vulnerable place for people, it's our job to make it easy for them and make you guys feel good when you walk in. So it's very simple. When you sign up for class, there's a class roster with everybody's name. How does it work in the fitness industry? I'll tell you. You walk into Brian's boot camp and he's like, first thing out of his mouth, what do you think it is? What's your name? Like literally, I like see SNL skit, like, what's your name? What's your name? What? I mean, like, how transactional is that? So simple. I'm like, you have the roster. You know who they are. There's this thing called Facebook. You just stalk them so that when Brian walks in, you're like, Brian, what's up? And Brian's like, holy shit, they know my name. Like all of a sudden I feel comfortable. It's so little, but it's so meaningful, right? Because you're like, okay, I'm good. I feel comfortable. Create that connection. So we talk about if I'm going to correct Lisa in her squat, I have to connect with her before I correct her form. Because again, if the insight is she's vulnerable and a coach who is like probably 10, 15 years younger than we are is going to come up to me and be like, you're doing it wrong. I'm going to be like, screw you, I'm here. Right? Like, yes. So how do you make that connection? And the coach has to figure that out. It has to be really easy. It has to be frictionless. Like you have to be able to sign up on the app. You have to walk in, they know your name. Like everything just has to be so easy. We have to have people be able to come in 2 minutes late for class and we have a towel and their water waiting and we're getting them in and they feel great. It has to feel like home. The 11-star experience. And there's a lot more to this, but in the interest of time, I'll leave it there. Marketing. Okay, this is critically important. And I will tell you that this took a long time for me to figure out. So coming from Target, where you know, I think my marketing budget in beauty was like $150 million, you know, and I was like, oh my God, you're gonna cut my budget by 10%. I basically have no money. So then I went to FlyFeed and I actually had no money. So there's this quote, and I can't remember who said it, one of you guys will know, but it's like, we have no money, so now we have to use our brain. So I'm like, well, here we go. So what I have learned through this journey is, again, if fitness is a very vulnerable place for people, do you think a Facebook ad gets people to convert? Hell no. Like they see someone running on a treadmill, they're like, ooh, that looks hard. I don't know if I can do that. Right? All of these like thoughts in their head come like all of their like negative self-talk, right? So like big marketing campaigns don't work in fitness. I'm telling you. What does work is one-to-one. So if Lisa is like, there's this class, I want you to come. This is how it goes. Lisa's with Ellen. There's this class I want you to come to with me. And Ellen's like, no way. Like that, I've heard that's really, really hard. Lisa's like, it is hard, but you're gonna be okay. I'm gonna be there with you. We're gonna do it together. They have a moment. They go to class. Ellen looks at Lisa, that moment where she's like, this is hard. Lisa's like, I know, you're gonna be fine. Ellen's like, I'm not sure I'm gonna be fine. Lisa's like, no, you're gonna be fine. Ellen does something she's never done before, and then Lisa's there to high five her, and all of a sudden Ellen's like, I'm doing this every day. That's how that works. Yeah. It has to be one-to-one. And so for us, we're like, how do we create those opportunities for our members to be evangelists for all of you to come to FlyFeed? Honestly, like it is, when you think about like marketing reach, it is incredibly protracted, but it's the only thing that works. Because this, people are like, I don't know, that doesn't look like it's for me. But that, all day, right? So how do we create that experience for our members? We remove barriers. So in our when we do, so we have an Instagram feed, we write blogs. Much of what we talk about is how we remove there are a dozen reasons why all of you can't do something today as it relates to moving your body that are all very real, and I could tell you all of mine. But how do we remove those barriers for you? How do we get you over that hump? And that's what we talk about in our blogs, on our marketing, on our Facebook page, on our Instagram, removing barriers, because very realistically, that is what we're all battling. And you'll never see someone's six pack. They look like us. They're like normal people just trying to like move our bodies. And that only works if you live into the belief system I talked about. You have to create a team. And look, I'm not here telling you like we've got it all figured out, but you have to have a team that believes in all of those things. Because the second you have a coach that is in there and takes his shirt off and has a six pack and is like standing back there watching people doing it, you lose it. Like they're gone. Mm-hmm. So you have to create a team that lives into your values, which means that you have to then, as a leader, I'm like, well, if I look at the fitness industry, the way it works is this. They're all independent contractors, which means they work at my competitor, right? Like, so they'll coach at one place, and then in order to string an income together that makes sense, they have to go coach at another place, and then they have to go coach at another place. So there's no loyalty, and they have no benefits. They are fitness professionals that are independent contractors that are working at all their competitors, and they have no benefits. I'm like, well, that doesn't sound like a recipe for success. So at 5 feet, I'm like, most of our coaches are full-time, salaried with benefits, which nobody in the industry does, but that is the only way that they're going to be able to provide for you the experience that I just articulated, right? Like, that's the only way that happens. And as a team, you get what you, I don't know, what's the phrase? You expect what you inspect. I'm not sure, but like what we are focused on is that experience every day. And we figure out innovative ways to get feedback from all of our customers. We take that, I send an email out to our team every day. If you come to Fly Feet for the first time, you get a survey back. And most people fill it out. We have several thousand survey responses, and there are 5 simple questions. We do the Net Promoter Score, but we also ask like, what would have made it better for you? And in a vulnerable experience, people will tell you. Like, even if they had a good experience, what makes it better? Well, let me tell you. And that's how we kick off every team meeting. What would have made it better for people? And it gets your team in the headspace of the 11-star experience. So it's about the how. Okay, I just talked a lot. That was more than 20 minutes. So come see us. Let me just tell you, and I'm going to make it real easy for you. So the workout, so yes, it's a workout. It's high intensity interval training. You'll do a little bit of running on the treadmill. You'll do a little bit of strength work on the floor. It's you versus you. You can go to flyfeetrunning.com. You buy an unlimited week of classes, and when you get to check out, use the code FLYFREE, and you get it for free. You can come to the one downtown. You can come to the one Lysetta. There's my shameless plug. Okay, so that's vulnerability at Fly Feet. Any questions? Yeah, real excited. Any questions? Yeah.
So what's been your biggest challenge that you've experienced in starting the business?
Yes.
That's come up that you've had to overcome?
My biggest challenge might be surprising to you, because I think when you ask an entrepreneur that question, it usually is like a funding or growth or whatever, but the honest answer for me is like that experience doesn't work unless I have a really high functioning team. Mm-hmm. And I spent my career leading teams at Target. And my biggest challenge at Fly Feet is figuring out how to be the right leader for my team. Because at Target, this is what the Target profile looks like. So like a business analyst right out of school is like, when am I gonna get promoted? Give me the hardest project. Yes, no, I don't know how to do that, but I will figure it out. Like, I'm not scared by risk, and I'm not worried about ambiguity. Like, yes, you're smarter than me, but I'm not intimidated by that. Like, they are so driven, and they have such an inflated sense of like their skill set, but they're like not worried about it. Like, they're just like, I got this, right? Like, they are so driven. And so managing that talent pool looks a lot different than managing coaches. And so my moment of vulnerability with you right now is I started to lead the 5P team the same way I led the Target team. And that was a disaster because they were like, we're doing what? What? Wait, you want to promote me? I am not ready. I cannot do that. No. We're moving with it. So we launched the first studio at the end of 2016. And 6 months in, I was like, we're going to open another one. And my team was like, I expected them to be like, yes, let's go. And they were like, ooh, I don't know. And I was like, what? So for me, the biggest challenge is, again, just like the focus group, like figuring out what motivates my team, what they're worried about, like what creates a meaningful experience for them is very different than anything else I've experienced in my career. And as their leader, that is my most important job, because the rest of it will fall apart if they don't feel like I'm connected to them and I'm not providing an environment, right? My third belief, I'm not providing an environment that allows them to be vulnerable and try and reach their full potential. That's, frankly, it's just been my biggest challenge. Yeah.
So you talk a lot about the experience you're creating for your customers, giving them this community, this sense of potential and vulnerability. How did you find those people in your life to allow you to?
Oh, geez, that's a great question. So this answer might be a little bit deep, but I think it's interesting, and it's something I've explored with my husband actually a little bit, because like I was the first person in my family to go to college, and my dad was an entrepreneur, and he created a business that was incredibly successful out of like grit and hard work. And he was like, he always said, like, I may never be the smartest person in the room, but I know I will always be the hardest person in the room. And so he just sort of came at life from the perspective of, I have nothing to lose. And so through the eyes of a child, I was like, well, that's how it works, right? Mm-hmm. But what's interesting is that all of a sudden didn't apply to me when I was a vice president at Target. Because I was like, no, I actually have everything to lose if I quit and this doesn't work. And so I guess I recognize for most people, and I know this because I mentor a lot of people, like that is a reason why they won't leave, right? But I think just because I have always, the way I was brought up was like, you just swing for the fences, and if you leap, the net will present itself. I was like, I'm just gonna go for it. So this, when I like left, people were like, there was like two cohorts. One was like, yes, girl, you go. The other group was like, are you freaking crazy? Like, what are you doing? And I was like, I will figure it out. So I think I have a lot of mentors that have enabled me through my life, but I honestly think it comes back to, as a kid, just watching, and I don't think that was my dad's. I don't think my dad was like, I'm gonna be a role model. I'm sure he thought he would be a role model, but I don't think he understood what he was doing for me. I'm not sure he still understands like what he does for me. So for me, I'm like, I can see that, and I'm like, how do I do that for my kids, right? I remember I walked into, there's a great leader at Target named Jill Sando, who I know I walked into her office and I said, I'm gonna quit today. And she was like, you're what? And I walked her through like what I was doing, and she looked at me and she said, I think you should go because this would make Sydney proud. And Sydney's my daughter. And I was like, so I think it's just, I think just being able to step away and see it through that lens is helpful. Other questions? Yeah, Brian.
What gave you that confidence to open the second location?
That's a great question. I I think the same thing that gave me the confidence to leave Target and try the first location. I knew, okay, so like when I like wrote the business plan, and there are 3 things that need to be true in the proof of concept in a fitness business. You have to show that you work with the younger, fickle, ever-changing millennial that like loves you one day and thinks you suck the next, right? Like you have to show that you work with that group. And that is on 15 South 5th Street. You will all go there and be 10 years older than most of the people there. But you're gonna be okay with that because you know what? We're vulnerable and we are enough. And we are okay. I mean, I roll in there and I'm like, when I'm with my friends and they're my age, they're like, we are the oldest person in the room. And I'm like, yes, we are. That's okay. We're gonna do it just like they are. Okay, so we have to prove that. We also have to prove that we work with the more lucrative, scalable demographic in the first ring suburb. So like in NYZ, the conversation sounds like this. Okay, it's May and it's like above freezing. So I'm gonna put my membership on hold because I'm gonna run outside to save some money because they're, 30 and a little earlier in their career, don't have the disposable income that maybe we do when we're 10 years older. In Wayzata, it sounds like this. Well, I mean, I have my lifetime membership and I go to yoga, so I have my 4-hour membership. And so, yeah, I'll get a Fly Fee membership too. I mean, it's just like, what? You have 3 gym memberships? That's cool. If that's works for you. Let's go. But so, if you have to prove that you work in a suburban, higher household income demographic, because those are the people who are what I just said. They walk in and they're like, ooh, I go into some fitness studios in the Twin Cities and I'm like, I feel uncomfortable because I'm 43 years old. So you have to prove that. Then the third thing you have to prove, so that's why I opened the second one quickly, because I was like, I work with millennials and I work with the scalable demographic. But then the third thing that we have to do, which is future, is we have to prove we work in a different market. So like the Twin Cities is actually an incredibly competitive fitness market. So our next frontier for Fly Feed is, okay, prove, because to be honest, like to scale this business, it's very expensive and we've done it all ourselves in partnership with Wells Fargo. Thank you very much. So like we have to essentially like raise money in one way or another to open a third one, because I do want my kids to go to college one day and we're not going to be able to let that happen if we continue to pour all of our money into Fly Feed. But it has to work in another market, and we will likely do that out west. Yeah.
Did you have a backup plan?
Good question. This is how I rationalized it. I was like, I'm old enough that I know a little something, but I'm young enough that if I screw it up, I can go get another job. I shared this with you before we started. My accidental backup plan, I did, but by accident. So when I left Target, I started, I ran beauty and personal care for Target. And when I left, all these people reached out to me to do consulting for them. And I was like, oh, this could be good. My husband's like, yes, this could be good. You need the money. So I started doing consulting with mostly, like in beauty, there are all these small brands that are eating the big brand's lunch, but there's a lot, I do consulting for private equity, because they're investing in a lot of these smaller brands, and to them, they all look the same, and they don't understand what the critical success factors are. So I do a lot of consulting in private equity. A lot of brands that I worked with at Target reached out to me and asked me to consult for them. So as I got into it, I was like, okay, well, if this doesn't work, I can at least consult and keep my foot in the industry and kind of understand what was going on. But I mean, I was like all in on Fly Feed.
Well, thank you, everyone. This was great. Thank you.
Are you gonna come to class?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll take it.
Kelly's our in-house runner, the pace setter. Speed, very fast, very impressive.
That's okay.
That's her. That's
I mean, I'm sure really fast, but nobody cares at Fly Feed. That's right.
Right.
I love it.
Right. Exactly. You get me.
Yes.
Sit. Me. Something like
Yeah,
that.
that's it.
That was wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for attending. We have next month, we have Kim Martinez, who comes out of General Mills and is head of marketing for St. Thomas, my alma mater. She'll be on our stage and tell the stories of managing a brand that's an institution that's been around for a long time. There's a lot of interesting challenges, right? We'll see how that goes. It should be fun. That's next month. If you want to talk to somebody else about a project, leave a business card. If you want to actually get an invite, leave a business card, because, we're fairly good at this. The name tags would indicate that we are, but, sometimes we forget to invite those who've been here before. And you're like, how come I can't get my invitation? Well, check your junk folder. Maybe. That's what I can hope. So anyway, thank you everyone for going through the park or the construction problems and challenges and coming to this one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Well done.
Thank you.